Good morning, everyone. I'm Swarnakala, Research Scholar from Department of Marine Biotechnology, and I feel privileged to welcome you all for the third day technical session of the national level virtual conference on diagnosis, management, and vaccination for COVID-19, organized by Internal Quality Assurance Cell of EMET in collaboration with Department of Marine Biotechnology and Young Academy of India, Punjab. A warm welcome to everyone. May I now request Dr. Selvakumar Sir, Assistant Professor from Department of Marine Biotechnology, to deliver welcome address and introduce our first speaker for the day, Dr. Farooq Abdullah from Health Department, Government of India. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Salam. It has been a great privilege and honor for me to give a welcome address on the third day of our national level virtual conference on diagnosis, management, and vaccination for COVID-19, organized by IQAC and in association with the Department of Marine Biotechnology, Ahmad University. On behalf of IQAC and Department of Marine Biotechnology, I welcome our Vice Chancellor, Trivasam sir, for the conference, and also I welcome our registrar sir, Dr. Jaiprakash sir. Welcome sir for the conference. And today we have two keynote speakers for the day, and I welcome them for the conference. I definitely know that with their inspiring speech, they will flourish the occasion. Yes, it is a timely need to gather information on vaccination, and we could see through media people suffering from this pandemic, and even though they could not find a bed in the hospital, and there has been a vast demand of oxygen, and this is a current situation, my friends. So it is the only through vaccination the situation can be overcome. So I welcome all the participants who are actively participating in the conference and posting their valuable questions in the chat box. I welcome all of them. Now it's a time to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Farooq Abdullah sir. He is an MBBS, MD. He was born and raised in Sivagangai, and he has been practicing his medicine in his hometown now. And he has been working as a government physician in Tamil Nadu for the last 8 years. 5 years, he has been a health center responsible officer in the government medical service. He has 2 years of work experience as a deputy manager of national health movement at district level, and he has been an excellent thinker, writer, and has been frequently giving talks about immunization and spread of infectious disease that pose the threat to the public health. He has more than 35,000 Facebook followers, and his medical science articles are also widely shared in all the platforms, e-platforms. In the Vigadan group, he has been consistent medical expert writer, particularly his writing on Meendum Mealworm from epidemics was published in Ananda Vigadan magazine last year, and it was well appreciated. And in another magazine, Malligai Mahal, is a monthly magazine, and he has been writing medical science articles for the past 3 years. And his science-related articles are put up in many magazines and newspapers like Dinamalar, Dinatandi, Hindu, Tamil Hindu, and Pudhiya Talamurai. His articles on COVID vaccine is featured this year's Vigadan Yearbook, the Vigadan Yearbook. He is also a campaigner and advocate for low-calorie diet to protect people from infectious disease such as diabetes, obesity, and PCOD. And he has authored 3 scientific books on the low-calorie diet. He runs medical and diagnostic camps twice a year in the hill villages. It is noteworthy that his Facebook friends are providing the financial support for this. And with such a crowdfunding system, he provided medical care and financial assistance to about 50 villages in the Delta areas during the time of the Hurricane Gajapuyal in 2018. And he got honored a humanitarian doctor award from News 18 TV channel for this service. And he has been raising awareness about this pandemic spread of corona in newspapers as well as in the social media since since the start of the COVID. He was the one who said that the country will face the second wave of COVID by last October itself. He has predicted that. He has been establishing and running some specialized group to spread awareness about the COVID on Facebook and WhatsApp regularly. I welcome now Dr. Farooq Abdullah sir to deliver his speech. Welcome, sir. Sir, carry on with your speech, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your elaborate reception, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I must render my thankfulness to Amet University for rendering upon this wonderful opportunity on me. Good morning to everyone. Today's my talk is about COVID diagnosis and management. In previous days, the talks were a bit by protocols and vaccination. Yesterday, my brother, Dr. Safiullah, has rendered a wonderful path-breaking session on COVID vaccination. Now let's get into how to diagnose COVID and how to manage it at home or when to get admission likewise. Why evolving second wave is dangerous than first wave? Because during first wave, we attained our peak on September 16th, where India recorded 97,000 cases and 1,200 deaths. But till February first week, India was not aware that it will get a second wave. But the second wave was so rampant that first wave took 110 days to achieve peak from 8,000 cases. While second wave just took 62 days. That is half of the time taken to achieve, to path break the achievement by first wave. That is 1 lakh cases. Now India is recording 4 lakh cases consistently daily and recording 4,000 deaths daily. India's second wave is more rampant than USA's third wave, which saw more than 2.5 lakhs death in USA itself. So for a 30 crore population country with 50 ICU beds for every 1 lakh population, they have recorded 2.5 lakh deaths in third wave. So imagine in a country like India, where we have only 1.5 ICU beds for every 1 lakh population, and the second wave is rampant than third wave of USA. See the colossal nature of second wave of India. So to win any disease, first you have to get a knowledge about how to sense the symptoms. So sensing the symptoms means you are in the path to win the disease. So sensing the symptoms is the key to survival. What are the symptoms? In first wave, we have seen 60 to 70% of cases presenting with fever as a pathognomonic symptom, telltale signs. So fever will present in first day, and in third to fourth day, patient will start to cough with or without loss of sensation to smell or taste. But in second wave, we are getting a variety of symptoms like patient may not get fever, but patient may feel a sense of pain or ache. We will call it as myalgia, arthralgia, that is a bone breaking fever or bone breaking pain, severe sore throat, loose stools, discoloration of fingers or toes, severe headache, rashes on the skin, then reddish discoloration of eyes, that is called conjunctivitis. So we are seeing variety of symptoms. So we should get the knowledge about symptoms, and we should record the day 1 of symptom, which is very important in COVID-19. Wherever you go, doctors will ask about which is the day 1 of the symptom. So day 1 of the symptom is the very important day you should note in the calendar. Nowadays, we are also seeing no fever COVID among a geriatric population, that is old age population. They will just complain about severe body pain, severe tiredness and loss of appetite, unable to take food properly, unable to do daily active things they were doing till yesterday. They were able to go to bathroom and come back till yesterday, but from today, they may not be able to go to bathroom without any assistance. So it is a very important sign we should notice. Regarding when a person gets infected, the symptoms of COVID won't be present on that day itself. From the day of exposure till the symptoms of COVID expresses in that person, that period is called incubation period. The incubation period, median incubation period for COVID-19 is 5 to 6 days. So today, example, today I am getting the infection from some person. I may not present with symptoms for another 5 to 6 days. Say in next week, Thursday, I will present with fever. So in between this 5 days is called incubation period of the disease. The day of presenting with symptom is day 1. So from the day 1 till day 14, the 2 weeks are highly infectious period, and the person may spread the disease to others. In that 14 days, first 7 days is very, very highly infectious period because virus will stay in his upper respiratory tract, that is nose and mouth. So he will spread it through coughing, laughing, sneezing, and even through talking. So COVID-19 has 3 types of transmissions: symptomatic, pre-symptomatic, asymptomatic. Symptomatic means when a person has a symptoms of COVID like cough, sneezing, likewise, he will spread the disease, he will spread the virus through droplets which are spread from coughing and sneezing. Pre-symptomatic means just 1 to 2 days before exhibiting symptom, even in incubation period, he can spread the disease to others. Asymptomatic means even without symptoms, he can spread the disease just by talking with his colleagues or his family members within the dangerous zone, that is 6 feet. So we must be very alert that when you get exposed to a COVID positive person without any mask, you should get isolated or quarantined without contact with other family members or other colleagues. It should be very important in breaking the transmission chain. So what are the difference between isolation and quarantine? Isolation means when a person expresses the symptom of COVID-19, when he goes into isolation, when he goes into a room and locks himself responsibly, it is called isolation. And the persons who are in contact, who were in contact with that person who is exhibiting symptoms, going into isolation are called quarantine. So for people who are sick, it's called isolation. For people who are not sick but may have been exposed, is called quarantine. So we must know the difference. Why isolation is called responsible isolation? Because no one should force you to get into isolation, because it must come within inside that when you get symptoms of COVID-19 like mild fever, sore throat, sneezing, coughing, headache, you must get into your room and lock yourself. No one should force yourself to get into your room and lock. That's called forced isolation. It should not be done. It should come within ourselves to break the chain of transmission. Quarantining of family members is also very important because they are exposed to the person who is exhibiting symptoms, and they are vulnerable to exhibit symptoms in forthcoming days. So they also should not attend any gatherings or any congregations in forthcoming 7 to 14 days. Quarantine should be very strictly followed. What to do if a household member has coronavirus or symptoms of coronavirus? So choose a room for the person to stay in. Clean your hands and use protective equipments. Monitor their symptoms and your health. Practice social distancing at home, 6 feet distancing, and always wear masks inside home where a person is expressing the symptoms of COVID-19. Take precautions around pets because even pets can also get infected from human beings. Use separate household items for them to serve food, and also a separate toilet should be provided. When to get tested is the billion-dollar question. The testing usually done here is nasopharyngeal swab, where a stick with cotton swab is inserted into nose deep inside, and a swab is taken in a deep throat near tonsil. It is called a nasopharyngeal swab and throat swab. A technique used is called RT-PCR technique. So when to take a test? When to take a test means here the red graph denotes the viral load. See that from the symptom onset to 15 days, in the first week, the viral load slowly grows up. So when you take a test in the first week, more possibilities of you getting positive result. But when you postpone the test to second week, their viral load will be in a declining phase, more chance of getting a negative result. So any test should be done within 1 or 2 days of starting of symptom. So when you get a symptom, get tested. In moderate and severe disease, you can see that viral load not get reduced even after 15 days. It can exist up to 35 days from day of symptom onset. Regarding symptom progression, there will be a 1 to 3 day of pre-symptomatic phase. Then stage 1, where you will get all the signs of influenza, flu-like symptoms like fever, dry cough, anosmia, that is loss of sensation to smell, headache, loose stools. Then all other symptoms can be exhibited. In stage 2, it is very important that you may get a shortness of breath, that is discomfort during breathing, or breathlessness may present with or without hypoxia. What is hypoxia? When the person's oxygen status, that is SpO2, we are having a small instrument called finger pulse oximeter, which measures the oxygenation status of blood in a periphery, capillary blood oxygen measuring meter. When it gets below 96 or 95, it is called hypoxia. That is, blood is going for low levels of oxygen. So shortness of breath with no hypoxia is one stage. Shortness of breath with hypoxia is another stage. That is stage 2. Stage 3 means person will go for acute respiratory distress syndrome. That is more than 30 breathing per minute. And also go for systemic inflammation. That is, not only lung will get infected, but also more organs like kidneys, liver, and brain may get inflamed. It will lead to multi-organ failure. Apart from this, COVID is primarily a thromboembolic disease. That is, blood may clot inside the blood vessel and may go into clotting, and they may obstruct any organ's blood supply. It is a very dangerous regarding to COVID-19. So we must treat all this, and we must know about all these symptoms, and when to reach hospital is the very, very important parameter. And also, when you get many people, that is 30 out of 70 people may get negative result in RT-PCR. So negative in RT-PCR may not be a true negative. So isolate yourself for 7 days till symptoms resolve. Watch for symptoms. Whether the symptoms are going in just 3 days, that is, if you are going to get fever or cough, whether it's resolving within 3 days or it's progressing, fever more than 5 days or cough more than 5 days, then you are getting a chest discomfort or breathlessness, then a negative RT-PCR result must not reassure you. You must get CT scan under the guidance of a doctor, treating doctor. So you must be very careful even with a negative RT-PCR. Then why you are getting negative RT-PCR? Already I discussed with that is, in first week viral load it will be in ascending phase. In second week it will be in descending phase. So in a first week sensitivity of RT-PCR is 70%. That is, in every 100 tests 70 will be positive, 30 will be negative. In second week, for every 100 tests 50 will be positive and 50 will be negative, right? And also arrival of variants like UK variant, South Africa variant, Brazil variant, then Maharashtra, Bengal, and Andhra Pradesh variant may escape from RT-PCR also. So when you are getting a variant, it may escape RT-PCR. So we should be vigilant with symptoms progression and also with SpO2 monitoring, oxygen monitoring. You should not get false reassurance of a negative RT-PCR test. Just by getting a negative RT-PCR test, you are not safe. So early testing, early diagnosis is a road to recovery. So don't delay testing. When you are getting symptom, go and get tested, right? So don't panic and be positive about COVID-19, because 80% diagnosed cases are asymptomatic and mild COVID. They may not progress to moderate COVID or severe COVID. So in every 100 patients, 80 patients are going to thrive even without any treatment, and only with self-isolation, they must improve. This is the pattern which is for COVID is following even now for the past 1.5 years. Among every 100, 20% must need treatment. They need treatment. So we must be very careful in advising a testing or treatment in COVID-19, because 80% will be asymptomatic and mild. They must not advise to those 20% that stay at home, don't take any treatment likewise. So we must be very vigilant in diagnosing that 20% who are going to become as moderate as well as severe disease. So, in that 20%, 17% will become a moderate disease and another 3% will become a severe disease. This 20%, they need treatment for sure. Let's discuss about them. So when you get a positive result, don't go into getting treated by yourself. It is a rational and ethical and also a mandate to consult a doctor. Your treating doctor, he may be a government personnel or a family physician. Consult a doctor. He will do a severity assessment of a disease and also risk assessment based on your age, because more than 45 years, 88% of deaths happen during first wave wherein age groups more than 45 years. And also they will assess about comorbidities you are having. You may be a diabetic, hypertensive, coronary artery disease patient, stent fixed, coronary bypass done, or dialysis doing patient. Likewise, many comorbidities are there. And also there are other social factors like there may be no one to take care of you when you are in home isolation. Likewise, doctor will do a severity and risk assessment and will advise about home isolation or an institution isolation. So if a doctor is advising you a social institutional isolation, kindly go for institutional isolation. If he is satisfied with home isolation, get into home isolation with all precautions. So 88% COVID deaths in 45 plus age group, right? And also we must also get the mind that in second wave, younger age group people are also getting infected and also getting hospitalized. Younger people without comorbidities are also dying. More than 30% growth rate in death rate been registered in younger people without comorbidities. So we must be careful in doing triage and advising home isolation even in younger people also. So responsible home isolation starts breaking the chain of infection, because when you get infected, when you are not going to transfer the disease to others, that is your family members or your members in society, you are breaking the chain of infection, which is very vital for a country to get rid of this pandemic. What are the rules government is expecting? Means there must be a separate room, that must be a separate toilet for COVID-19 patient, because COVID-19 virus, that is coronavirus, can spread through say toilets, that is aerosol spread. Fecal spread is noted. Caregiver must be in place. A house with only single person without caregiver, he must not be isolated in home. It is very, very not advisable, because he may die out of hypoxia and may not be taken care of. What are the instructions for caregiver and patients? Caregiver, when treating with patients, he must wear gloves, he must wear masks, and then he can give care to the patient without any problem or panic. Then separate items should be used for the patients. COVID-19 home isolation kit may contain one digital thermometer, one digital pulse oximeter, and a diary and a pen to note the readings of temperature as well as SpO2. If the temperature goes about 38 degree or 100.4 degree, paracetamol can be taken. Paracetamol tablet 500 milligram thrice or 4 times daily can be taken during first few days of infection. Then oxygen saturation, very, very important in home isolation. Usually 99% of world population are right dominant, that is they use right hand as a dominant hand. So right middle finger is the best finger to take oxygen saturation. There should not be shivering, there should not be nail polish or henna applied. Don't take the readings near bright light, which may affect the readings. Place the finger pulse oximeter probe for at least 1 minute, and then their wave pattern will be seen. Then SpO2 will be shown. That reading should be taken. Right. Let's come to mild or asymptomatic COVID. That is 80% of patients fall in this category. Their SpO2, that is oxygen in finger pulse oximeter, will be always more than 94% in room air. There won't be any aggravation of symptoms. Just a fever, just a sore throat, running nose, loss of smell and taste. It will vanish within 5 days. Then single breath count. Take a deep breath. Just count within yourself. 1, 2, 3. If you are able to count more than 20, you are safe. Respiratory rate less than 18 per minute, you are safe. You are in mild asymptomatic COVID. You must know that every 4 out of 5 people infected in this world are experiencing only mild or very asymptomatic cases. Then there is 6 minutes walk test. Check your pulse oximeter reading in baseline before walking. It may show 96 or 97. Go for a 6 minutes walk within inside room. Don't go outside room or outside house. Check the pulse oximeter reading again. If you are going to see more than 4% drop, it indicates the pneumonia setting inside. Pneumonia means lung infection. Here it's COVID-19 pneumonia. So mild asymptomatic COVID, no progression of symptoms, no drop in SpO2 below 94, no drop after 6-minute walk test. Cheer up. You are inside that 80%. So you are going to win this COVID. So how many days you are going to isolate from others? After 10 days of symptom onset, no fever for past 3 days, you are safe, you can discontinue home isolation. After completion of home isolation, advise to self-monitor health for further 7 days, because there is also a phenomena called late progression. But it is very, very rare, so don't panic. Self-monitor the health, that is at least twice you see SpO2, finger pulse oximeter, and watch for danger signs like breathlessness, fever arising again, or a cough increasing in later 7 days. No need for testing after the home isolation period is over. So no need for mandatory testing of RT-PCR negative, because RT-PCR positive result may be obtained till 35 days from symptom of onset due to dead virus particles present in upper respiratory tract. So they are not going to cause infection to others. So don't panic. Don't insist on repeat negative RT-PCR for a person who completed his home isolation according to Indian government guidelines. Then comes our next 17% of cases, that is moderate COVID-19. If symptom progresses, that is if high fever persists even after 3 days or 5 days, cough is persistent, and breathlessness is noted on walking, or when a patient passes his motion or going to toilet, uses a toilet and comes, he will go into breathlessness. Then when you keep finger pulse oximeter, the reading may show less than 94, more than 90. Then drop of SpO2 more than 4% in 6-minute walk test, patient falls on moderate COVID-19 category. He is in need of treatment. So he must be taken care of with proper care. Don't panic now also. Call your doctor. Kindly take, he may order inflammatory markers test, CT scan chest on 6th day. Only when needed by your doctor, do CT scan. Don't abuse CT scan in the first week of infection. Kindly take CT scan only when needed. That is when symptom progresses, or when you are going to get RT-PCR, initial RT-PCR negative, but symptom is progressing. Your doctor may advise that. So don't take CT scan by yourself. Serial chest X-ray is the best option when you are hospitalized. So in the second week of infection, serial chest X-rays are taken at hospitals to know the progression and regression of disease. HRCT is only indicated when patient is worsening. See this example, a person gets symptoms of COVID. On day 3, he gets a CT scan by himself, which shows that Corads 1. Corads 1 means it's definitely not a COVID. So patient gets a false reassurance. Then he spreads the disease to others. On another 2 days, his symptoms like cough and fever increases. And on day 6, he goes and takes CT scan. It's coming as Corads 5. So same person, Corads 1 on day 3, changing into Corads 5 on day 6. So there is minimum, very minimum role of CT scan in first week of infection. So if at all needed, a doctor may ask for CT scan in second week of infection. That is rational and ethical. CT scan severity for 25 score, if it is given as less than 8, it is mild. When it is given as 9 to 15, it is moderate. When it is given as more than 15, it is severe. But you must get into an attention that it is given that severity is noted on that particular day when you take CT scan. It may progress in later days also. So many persons may think that on 6th day, when they get 8, less than 8, they think that they are in a mild category, and they may get false reassurance. Must not be there. False reassurance must not be there, because on 6th day, when you are going to get 8 by 25, more higher chances that disease is going to progress in another 1 week. So you must be vigilant in monitoring your SpO2, finger pulse oximeter reading, and also you must be vigilant in monitoring your symptom progression. This must be very important, right? Then lab monitoring, inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein, D-dimer, complete blood count, renal function, kidney function test, liver function test, interleukin 6 are monitored according to doctor's needs. It must not be, even inflammatory markers must not be abused by patients. It must be ordered by doctors, and it has a value in assessing the prognosis of the disease, right? Then for patient in moderate COVID-19, they must be in a position to order for a bed, because oxygen bed nowadays are in very high demand. So you may not get a bed whenever your saturation desaturates. So you will be in a waiting position. So during that period, awake proning is very helpful. It is a process of turning a patient with precise, that is when during normal times we usually sleep in a supine position where we will face the upper floor. But here we should prone ourselves, kuppurapaduttal in Tamil solluvom. So it will increase medically accepted position to improve breathing comfort and oxygenation. So it must be practiced in moderate COVID patients. Here is the picture which shows that how to do proning. One pillow below the neck, 1 or 2 pillows below the chest, upper thighs, 2 pillows below the shins, that is the leg area. Your SpO2 must improve by 2 to 3%. And also another point in self-proning, for every 30 minutes to 2 hours, change the position to right lateral, left lateral. When you are going to sit, stretch the legs and sit in 45-degree inclination. Likewise, you have to change the position in 16 hours when you are awake. Avoid proning for an hour after meals. Maintain proning for only as much time as easily tolerable. So when you are unable to tolerate, just change the position. So up to 16 hours a day, you can practice this proning position. Pillows may be adjusted slightly to alter pressure areas and for comfort. Contraindication for proning, pregnancy, that too last 3rd trimester of pregnancy. When you sustained fracture of neck, thigh bone or hip and a major cardiac disease, contraindicated for proning. So need for medication. Moderates COVID-19 patient must need for oral or intravenous steroids, because they are evidently proven that steroids in moderate COVID reduces the rate of progression to severe COVID. Oral or subcutaneous anticoagulant, because I already said COVID-19 by itself causes blood clots. So to avoid blood clots, anticoagulants must be added. So you must call your doctor and follow his advices. For starting an intravenous steroid and subcutaneous anticoagulant, an oxygen bed may not be needed. So you can get admitted in a non-oxygen bed and get these drugs. Even though you are unable to get oxygen, these drugs may protect you from progressing to severe COVID. Anti-inflammatory drugs like methylprednisolone and dexamethasone are in use. The need for anticoagulation. COVID is a hyperthromboembolic state. That is, every 100 COVID patient, 16.5% may go into thromboembolism. That is blood clot events. Very dangerous. So heparin, low molecular weight heparin or unfractionated heparin is used as an anticoagulation. If unable to get admitted, oral anticoagulation agents are also available, which must be taken under physician guidance. You must not abuse it. So monitoring how a patient works for breathing, too much work, too much distress, it must be noted. Hemodynamic instability, pressure, blood pressure, pulse rate must be noted. Change in oxygen requirement must be noted. So any patient in moderate COVID level needs admission in step up with oxygen facility, but it depends on age, comorbidity and severity of disease, condition to availability of beds in his particular area. But according to protocol, any patient with moderate COVID, that is with hypoxia, needs oxygen facility, oxygen bed. But during current scenario, it's very demand. It's in very high demand. So awake proning, along with starting the life-saving drugs, that is anticoagulants in oral or IV form, steroid in oral or IV form, may save the patient and may prevent his progression to next stage of disease. So discharge criteria for a moderate patient is fever resolved within 3 days. If a fever is resolving within 3 days and the oxygen saturation is maintaining even without oxygen support, discharge him like mild case. If symptoms are not resolved, discharge only after resolution of clinical symptoms. That is, fever or cough must be relieved. Ability to maintain oxygen saturation for 3 consecutive days should be seen. For severe COVID-19, that is 3% of 100 cases, every 100 cases of COVID-19, when SpO2 falls below 90% in room air, when patient goes for more than 30 breathing per minute. And when you take CT, it will be more than 15 score for 25. Admission to ICU facility, as institution with ICU facility is a must, and hours delayed is very it's indicative of bad prognosis. So he must get ICU facility as soon as possible. In ICU facility, he will get respiratory support. First, he will get non-invasive ventilation. If work of breathing is very low, helmet or face mask interface will be used. If he is breathing, if he increases his oxygen requirement, high flow nasal cannula will be used. Then even high work of breathing is seen, and NIV is non-invasive ventilation is not tolerated, patient may get into intubation, and then ARDS. If he goes into ARDS, ventilatory management, CPAP management. If he gets back normal, that is, if he is going to go, get back normally, he will be discharged after clinical recovery. In this category only, repeat RT-PCR negative is indicated. Then few drugs of controversy. In the first place, remdesivir. Indian Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, as well as Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Tamil Nadu, has insisted on unnecessary irrational use of remdesivir is unethical. Remdesivir is an experimental investigational drug only granted for emergency use authorization, and governments are insisting on it is not a life-saving drug in COVID-19, and the studies do not demonstrate mortality reduction with this drug. It should be administered only in hospital settings, and it should not be administered or abused in home settings. It is advised for patients who are moderately sick and are able to receive oxygen. So in patients who are moderately sick and not on hypoxia, remdesivir is not going to get used. Likewise, Indian government has established their guidelines. But to know about in detail, in evidence about remdesivir, in June 1, 2020, the manufacturers of remdesivir, Gilead, has given their phase 3 trial results. That is, in moderate COVID-19, remdesivir resulted in significantly greater clinical improvement. Here also, they are not commenting about mortality benefits. They are commenting about significant greater clinical improvement versus treatment with standard care. Then WHO conducted a solidarity trial, that is trial name, and came to a conclusion that remdesivir has little or no impact on survival. WHO trial shows. So WHO recommends against the use of remdesivir in COVID-19 patients. But many studies done out of their own interest in many countries like UK, mortality benefit of remdesivir in COVID-19, a systematic review and meta-analysis was done. There they are telling that result of contemporary meta-analysis suggests that mortality benefit with remdesivir in COVID-19 and median recovery time was over 2 weeks. Pooled mortality with remdesivir was found to be very low. So remdesivir is providing some mortality benefits. Likewise, they are trying to establish. Lancet, a famous medical journal, describes about place of remdesivir in COVID-19. They are telling for patients with mild or moderately severe COVID-19, no need for respiratory support. Remdesivir does not offer any benefit. But for individuals at high risk of hyperinflammation and requiring supplemental oxygen, remdesivir shortens the time to recovery and reduces the risk of progression. Likewise, they are giving. Then tocilizumab. Tocilizumab's role only when hyperinflammation stage kicks in and cytokine, that is interleukin 6, rises haphazardly. Indian government's guidelines, all criteria below should be met to start tocilizumab. Must be a severe disease, and it should be started within 24 to 48 hours of starting of severe disease. Inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein and interleukin 6 must be significantly raised. Then even with use of steroids, condition is not improving. Then there must not be any active bacterial, fungal or tubercular infection. These are the 4 criteria one patient must fix before starting tocilizumab. So it's usually given as a single dose. Then role of convalescent plasma. Indian Council for Medical Research conducted many studies, trials, and came to conclusion that convalescent plasma did not lead to reduction in progression to severe COVID-19 and all-cause mortality. So its usage should be discouraged. who are all can be a potential donor for convalescent plasma. Men and women who may not, who have never been pregnant, people within the age group of 18 to 60 years with more than 50 kg body weight. They must be RT-PCR positive and they may not need a negative blood test. Negative RT-PCR now. Negative RT-PCR testing is not necessary. After 14 days of symptom resolution, they can donate convalescent plasma. Who can be recipient in the early stage of COVID-19 disease? That is 3 to 7 days from onset of symptoms, but not later than 10 days. What's new with this wave? Because in this wave, COVID 2.0 hits Indian kids with severe symptoms. So we must know something about how to diagnose COVID-19 severity in children also. This is CT scan of a 13-year-old female with more than 40% lung involvement. So we must be very aware that even children and pediatric age group can get moderate to severe infection of COVID-19. This is scan of a 5-year-old boy with 20 to 30% involvement. In Mumbai, more cases of pediatric COVID-19 are getting admitted. In every 10 cases, 1 or 2 are in oxygen or ventilator support. So we must be very careful. Don't bring children outside. If you are going to bring children outside, kindly mask them and kindly take care of them. Don't leave them unmasked. Okay. So severity based classification. Like every ILI, like influenza-like illness, mild disease will present with throat pain, not able to take food. They will drink only milk. Then running nose, loose stools may be present. No fast breathing will be seen. That is mild disease. In moderate disease, a fast breathing will be seen. For less than 2 months, 60, say more than 60 per minute. 2 to 1 year, more than 50 per minute. 1 to 5 year, more than 40. More than 5 years, it is more than 30 per minute. Then no signs of severe pneumonia. What are the signs of severe pneumonia? Cyanosis. When you fix finger pulse oximeter, the reading will be less than 90%, and mouth and fingers may change into bluish color. Then increased respiratory efforts. Child will just grunt or severely retract to breathe. Then lethargy. Always it will be very sluggish and it won't eat. Then it may get fits also. Child may get fits also. What are the signs for critical disease? Acute respiratory distress syndrome. Baby will go into unconsciousness and it will just gasp. So we must not leave to that phase. We should diagnose the disease by moderate disease and get treated. So for a mild disease, home isolation is enough. Supportive care, paracetamol syrup can be given. Danger signs must be taught to parents to report to health facility if any worsening is seen. Duration of home isolation is same as that of for adults. 10 days from the symptom onset, no fever for past 3 days, and further 7 days of home isolation and self-monitoring. No negative RT-PCR test is warranted. Then children with comorbidities like chronic lung disease, uncorrected heart disease, chronic kidney disease, with neurological disability like cerebral palsy, then autism, muscular dystrophia, immune compromised state. Special care must be given to those child by parents, and also those parents must be taught about danger signs of moderate illness. What are the indications for admission of children with COVID-19? When a child goes into respiratory distress or its SpO2, oxygen level goes less than 94, very poor intake in infants less than 1 year. When the child is not taking food or water, she should be admitted and started on IV fluids. Not passing urine for more than 6 hours, tiredness, sluggish, always sleeping with comorbidities, fits and mental confusion, the baby should be admitted as early as possible. Then comes our last topic, COVID patient, moderate or severe, getting admitted and discharged. In elsewhere diseases, people can be very safe after discharge, but in COVID-19 there is a word called post-COVID, because even after getting discharged, patient may come back for readmission with severe disease, or patient may go into thromboembolic events, that is blood clot events like heart attack, stroke likewise, and his diabetic state may get uncontrolled. His respiratory problems may not be controlled for more than 2 to 3 months. So During post-COVID state, proper health checkup, proper control of diabetes and hypertension, and to avoid blood clot events in discharged patient, there should be thromboprophylaxis by giving proper anticoagulants or antiplatelet drugs. Treatment to prevent lung fibrosis for more than 50% lung involved patients. Psychological counseling, because more patients are getting into depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Then investigations for cardiovascular disease or cardiovascular accidents. Proper tapering of steroids and other drugs must be done. They should not be stopped abruptly. Then chest physiotherapy for post-discharge patients is must. So these are all should be done for post-COVID patients. So they should not be left just like that after discharge. So complacency is going to kill. So don't be complacent in dealing with COVID-19. Take home messages, sense the symptom, isolate yourself responsibly, get tested as soon as possible, be cautious even after a negative swab. If symptom aggravates, may need CT test under the guidance of your physician. Get in touch with your family doctor, follow his orders, don't panic, know the danger signs, awake proning, get admitted if needed. And also, very important, say no to social stigma faced. Survivors often suffer from very high anxiety, stress and trauma due to social stigma they have experienced during the acute phase of illness. And it is very unscientific and inhuman to isolate people after post-recovery. So don't isolate them after post-recovery. It is safer to interact with a person as usual, recovered from COVID-19. The recovered person can no longer spread the virus. Spread this word. Anyone can contract coronavirus, regardless of race, ethnic origin, gender, age, or other personal qualities. So don't think that you have a good character, so you won't get coronavirus. Likewise, anyone can die with coronavirus. So to protect my loved ones, I pledge to clean my hands, cover my mouth and nose, keep my distance, and care for others. And I will not stigmatize or I will not ostracize patients who are suffering from COVID-19, and I will take care of them with all my heart. These are my references, and thank you very much for your kind patience. Be strong because things will get better. It may be stormy now, but it never rains forever. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving valuable information on diagnosis and management of COVID-19. The lecture has given us clear knowledge on diagnosis and management, which will help everyone to cope up with the current situation, as you have explained so efficiently. Now we are open for interactive session. So the participants who have questions can click to the raise hand option.
Sir, we have one question.
Swarna, you can read out the questions given in the chat box first.
Okay, sir.
Please go to the Q&A section.
So there is one question from Loganathan. There are few deaths reported even after 2 doses of vaccination. What is the real reason behind this? Is it necessary to take antiplatelets after vaccination?
Oh, she's asking about vaccine-related deaths or COVID-19 deaths after vaccination. What is his question, madam? He's asking about vaccine-related deaths, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, regarding vaccine-related deaths, our data shows that till March 31, 2021, more than 6 crore 30 lakh patients, 30 lakh persons doses of coronavirus vaccines given, with 90% more Covishield and 10% Covaxin. 124 deaths were recorded within 28 days after giving vaccine. Take that 124 deaths, most of them are due to cardiovascular events and cerebrovascular events, that is stroke. And few of them were unrelated deaths. Government of India National AEFI Committee has conducted audit on those 124 deaths and gave a report that those deaths are not directly related, temporally related, not directly related, but few deaths can have a causal relationship with vaccine. Now let's take those 124 deaths as a vaccine related deaths. So events, when you are going to do risk-based benefit analysis, among 6 crore 30 lakh doses given, 124 deaths were related to vaccines. The incident rate is 0.2 per 1 lakh vaccine doses. Now you do risk analysis. for every 1 lakh COVID patients, COVID-19 is going to kill 1,440 out of every 1 lakh infected. That is 4,200 times more deaths than what we are relating to vaccines. And regarding blood clot events, 16.8% COVID patients are going to get severe blood clot events and dying due to blood clot events. For that only we are giving anticoagulants. 16.8 means 1,68,000 out of every million. But blood clot events associated with COVID-19 vaccine, that is AstraZeneca vaccine in European Union, very, very minuscule when comparing to blood clot events associated with COVID-19 by itself. So risk is very, very low in vaccination, but risk is very, very high. Risk to die is very, very high when you are going to get COVID-19 disease. So take a better option, do risk-based benefit analysis that we always do in every life-saving conditions, and take up an intelligent decision. Next question.
Sir, the next question is from Satyamurthy. What is your opinion on our traditional Kabasura Kudineer in connection to COVID-19?
Ayush Ministry by India, Ayush Ministry of India is recommending Kabasura Kudineer coronal tablets likewise, but we are not yet getting any valid evidence, that is phase 3 trial study evidence regarding recently released 2-deoxyglucose also. We are yet to get proper evidence, proper study evidence. If you are going to see proper study evidence, and if scientific community is satisfied with that study evidence, no harm in taking Kabasura Kudineer as a treatment, no harm in taking coronal, or no harm in taking 2DG. But what we expect is the study design, the study protocol or study phase 3 study results can be released in a reputed indexed journal, peer reviewed. So it will get a scientific acclaim, and we all can approve it and can follow it. But till now, as a modern medicine doctor, I cannot recommend on things which are not having a strong evidence backup.
Sir, there is one more question. My family member has completed 16 days of isolation after first day of symptom. So hospitalization involved. What follow-up medication or safety measures you should suggest?
Follow-up medications, he or she may need oral anticoagulants for next 1.5 months. It must be prescribed by treating physician. He or she may need a multivitamin, a course of multivitamin, protein-rich diet, and psychological counseling by relatives if needed by a psychological counselor. And if his comorbidities are type 2 diabetes, hypertension, it must be treated well. If steroids are given more than 2 weeks, it must be titrated and shifted to oral steroids. It must be taken care of. If she is going to suffer from more than moderate disease, she can be prescribed with antifibrotics, and also chest physiotherapy is a must. Next question.
Next question is from Neha Saini. Which vaccine is more efficient, Covaxin or Covishield?
Both vaccines are efficient in reducing the deaths, reducing the severe COVID-19. Both vaccines are efficient in reducing hospitalizations due to COVID. If you are going to wait for a vaccine which is more efficient than other, more chances of you getting COVID-19 and landing up in ICU. Don't wait for best vaccine. Get vaccine which is earliest and nearest to you. That will be the intelligent option.
The next question is from Suma Gururaj. Is that okay to take Covaxin as second dose when Covishield is not available?
Oh, he's asking about interchanging of vaccine, second dose vaccine.
Yes, sir.
No such a guidelines from GOI, Government of India, till now. The second dose vaccine must be the same brand of first dose vaccine. We must not interchange vaccine without proper guidelines from GOI.
Doctor, good afternoon, doctor.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Can you please give some information on the second dose for vaccines for the COVID affected patients? Some
Yeah,
patients have got COVID after vaccination, and when they get vaccinated again.
Yes, yes. Well, nowadays we are seeing incidences of persons getting infected after first dose. When they can get the second dose means after proper isolation, after recovery, 1 month post recovery, they can get the second dose. They must get the second dose. 1 month post recovery.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So how long the vaccine gives protection, sir?
It's expected that it must give protection till 1 year, up to 1 year till now. And researches are going on about boosting with third dose with available new variants. Researches are going. So currently available vaccines must provide immunity till 1 year.
Swarna, a few more new questions have been asked in the.
Please, we can continue. We can continue. Please,
Swarna, you can read those questions.
Please ask, sir. Please ask.
Swarna?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There is one more question from Manpreet Kaur. Sir, please explain the RNA and DNA in terms of Covaxin and COVID Shield.
What is the association of RNA and DNA? What is asking? Messenger RNA vaccines he is asking, I hope. Messenger RNA vaccine is a technology where messenger RNA will, when injected into a person, will instruct our body to produce antibodies against spike proteins of coronavirus. Those vaccines are two vaccines are available currently. One is Comirnaty, manufactured by Pfizer BioNTech. Another one is Moderna, M1273, produced by Moderna. Here we are using two vaccines, Covaxin, which is an inactivated vaccine where virus is killed using chemical or heat and injected into a body. Our immune system will take it up as a live virus and produce immunity against that dead virus. Third vaccine, Covishield, is a replication deficient adenovector vaccine where we are taking an adenovirus which is spreading among chimpanzee, which has a genetic similarity and physical similarity with human beings, which spreads among chimpanzee and causes common cold-like symptoms in chimpanzee, but its spread among human beings are not recorded till now. We are taking that adenovirus and we are incorporating spike proteins of coronavirus into that adenovirus and injecting to persons. Our immune system takes it up as a coronavirus and produces antibodies against that spike protein. It is the mechanism of Covishield. Regarding Sputnik, same adenovector virus, but it uses recombinant human adenovirus. That is the only difference. With Covishield, it uses replication deficient chimpanzee adenovirus. With Sputnik, it uses human adenovirus, recombinant human adenovirus, dual adenovirus technology. In first dose, we are giving adenovirus 26. In second dose, we are giving adenovirus 5.
So the next question is from Dr. B. Chitra. Can COVID Shield vaccinated woman consume meftaspam during her menstrual period?
Yeah, mefenamic acid is an anti-inflammatory. It can be avoided one week post vaccination because we are expecting an immune response after vaccination. So it can be avoided. Any anti-inflammatory can be avoided. It's painkillers or painkillers of any origin can be avoided 1 to 2 weeks post COVID vaccination, because we may expect a reduced response when you take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug.
The second question is from Komal. After getting vaccine, why do people get sick, like fever, weakness and all?
When you get a vaccine, vaccine derived virus, that is replication deficient virus, our immune system will take it up as a normal virus. So it will do a battle with that virus. So such a battle is experienced as mild symptoms like fever, headache, cough, likewise. So many person will ask, even after vaccination, I didn't experience any of this fever, headache, or anything. It means whether it means that I'm not having any immunity at all. Not like that. Few vaccines have their own set of side effects like fever, headache, likewise. Many may not experience such a side effect. It's not that if you are not going to experience such a side effect, you may not get immunity. It's not like that.
The second question is from Vasuki. Affected person need to take vaccine after recovery?
Yeah, I answered Dr. M. Jayaprakash question. That is, after recovery from COVID-19, he or she may take vaccine 1 month post recovery.
The next question is,
I must give a rationale that immunity by disease is different from immunity from vaccine. Immunity from vaccine induces both T cell response as well as humoral response, while immunity from disease may not effectively induce T cell immunity, which is the memory cells. If again this virus is going to come back, vaccine induced immunity may protect you more than disease induced immunity. So even after you are getting disease, kindly vaccinate yourself to boost up the immunity, that is T cell immunity, which is very important in preventing severe disease after getting first time disease.
The next question is, sir, can we expect third wave in Tamil Nadu immediately after lowering of second wave cases in Tamil Nadu?
Actually, Government of India have declared that third wave is very imminent, and do your preparations for third wave. It may occur around year end, that is October, November, or December. It may be it's already imminent. Third wave is imminent, but its effect, its mortality pattern, and its spread will be decided by pattern of variants and also human behaviors during that period. And also it can be very well controlled by vaccination status. But worrying status is, till now, just 2% of Indian population is fully vaccinated. In Tamil Nadu, it is around 1%. And 60 years, more than 60 years, the vaccination persons who took at least one dose of vaccination is less than 10%. It's very worrying. We all are in a position to improve our vaccination status before facing third wave.
The next question is from Dr. Vaishali. DRDO has come up with medicine on corona. Please elaborate it. What is this medicine and its efficacy?
The DRDO has done the phase 3 trial, phase 2, phase 3 trial by May 2020 to October 2020 with deoxyglucose, which was already a drug used in cancer treatment. 2-deoxyglucose, when consumed with water, it gets into infected, virus infected cells or cancer cells, and it reduces, it actually obstructs the oxygen capacity of the cell, and indirectly it kills the virus as well as the cell. This is the mechanism of working of 2-deoxyglucose. What DRDO has told that it reduces the recovery time, and also it reduces the need for oxygen as well as ventilator. But what we need is proper phase 3 trial released in indexed journal, peer reviewed indexed journal. So we are all scientific community can read it, can assimilate it, and can know about what are the side effects, what are the real effects, how many patients are involved in phase 3 trial. Is it a randomized control trial? It is a blind, double-blinded trial or open-label trial? We didn't know that any details about that. This with amount of knowledge, I am sharing this. Thank you.
The next question is from Anita Parshekar. Is ivermectin effective against COVID-19, and is the drug safe for usage?
Ivermectin is primarily a drug, anti-parasite drug, anti-helminth drug, and it's tried by various nations and various institutes during first wave. WHO statement on ivermectin is it has no role in the prophylaxis as well as therapeutic of COVID-19, and it strictly condemns the use of prophylaxis use of ivermectin, because ivermectin by itself has many side effects, and also It cannot be used in lactating mother or pregnant mothers or to be pregnant mothers likewise. So there are two school of thoughts. Non-government based UK, non-government based organization in UK is supporting that ivermectin when given to whole world, it will end the pandemic. But I am not for that. In opinion regarding ivermectin, my opinion is also reflecting the opinion of WHO.
The next question, sir. Do feeding mothers can take vaccine?
According to Indian GOI, Government of India guidelines, vaccination is contraindicated in pregnancy as well as lactating mothers till now. But Federation of Obstetric Gynecologic Society of India, FOGSI, which is an authority of authority having more obstetricians and gynecologists dealing with pregnant as well as lactating mothers, they are recommending government to change the guidelines that let pregnant mothers and lactating mothers get the benefit of vaccination. But till now, Government of India guidelines has not changed. Thank you.
The next question is,
should I ask a question?
yeah, sure.
Myself, Dr. Pankaj Kumar Singh from IIT BHU.
Hi, sir.
My question in concern with the vaccine. As the vaccine is going on for the clinical trial that we already know, my question is behind that, if the vaccine which we are injecting in the patient or in the normal person, if the vaccine go and it will unable to form the antibody in any case, I'm not considering any case. In any case, if it is unable to generate the antibody, then what will this vaccine part will do in the body? What it can cause? That I want to know. Thank you.
It's highly unrecommended that to test antibody post vaccination, because antibody assays are done in different techniques like HLFA, HLIA likewise, and different assays are not able to pick up different antibodies, and there are two types of immune reactions are expected out of vaccination. That is, first one is humoral immunity, that only we are seeing with assays. But second one is T cell immunity. Many of our assays are not going to see T cell immunity. So even then, when you are going to get negative antibody report after vaccination, it's not that you are not getting any immunity out of vaccination. So CDC, USA, strictly not recommending post vaccination or post infection antibody in among patients. So don't worry, even after negative antibody test, there is a high chance, very high chance that you will be getting T cell immunity. T cell immunity, which is very, very important in preventing infection from COVID-19.
No, sir. My question is very simple. You are right. If antibody will be generated, that is the humoral system will generate, or the B cells or T cells, memory cells will be generated. That is okay. I know that thing. I'm already aware about these things. But still, my question is again that if the vaccine is unable to generate the antibody, what this vaccine, because we are putting different types of vaccines we are generating. Some are making the messenger RNA is using, some are using the dead part of the virus, and some are using so many techniques they are using. Okay, that is the research term that is going on. I'm just saying that if it will unable to do the job, that is for that we are just putting for the generation of the antibody. If this will not occur, whether what this part that we are putting some part of the virus, okay, or some part of the protein or other things, but that will be for to generate the antibody against the coronavirus. What it will cause? Can you explain on that?
For your assumption is, if it's not going to cause any immunity response, it's nothing. It's going to cause nothing, according to your own words. If it's not going to cause, any immune response, it's going to cause nothing. It's just a placebo. That's all.
that can't be said, sir, because if we are
No, you are, sir, you are having a difference of opinion. This is not the right platform to explain your difference of opinions. Okay.
okay,
You are,
no issue.
you are into a conspiracy theory. I can't answer conspiracies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon,
Happy with
doctor.
you.
Can I have? Good afternoon, doctor. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
See, recently it happened with me that someone.
Sir, kindly shorten your question, sir, because valuable time with everyone. Kindly shorten your question.
Yeah, okay. Post second dose of vaccination, within 3 days, if you go for RT-PCR test and you are positive, right? Is this because of infection or because of the virus present in the vaccine dose? So how do you rule out that it is not because of the vaccine and you are actually infected externally, you have got infected? How do you
Yes, sir.
rule out?
For that, rational answer must be till now more than 16 crore people are vaccinated, sir. If everyone is going to get infected by vaccine, there must be 16 crore patients by now, right?
No, I understand. What I'm trying to ask is, see, if you're found
Vaccine available in this world is unable to cause COVID-19 by itself, because Covaxin is an inactivated vaccine where virus is killed. Okay, it cannot replicate inside a person's body. Then Covishield is a replication deficient chimpanzee adenovirus. In chimpanzee it can replicate, but even in chimpanzee also, that's replication component is defective. So no chance of it getting replicated inside a human body and getting infection. And also we are giving infection, we are giving vaccine as a parenteral form, right? Intramuscular form.
Yeah.
Then how you can expect virus in RT-PCR taken from nasopharyngeal as well as throat swab?
No, I'm a layman. I'm just asking this question.
If at all you are going to give vaccine by nasal route, if you are going to give nasal spray as a vaccine, you can expect that a virus can escape or a virus can replicate. But you are giving as a parenteral route, then how can you expect a live virus in an RT-PCR taken from nasopharyngeal or throat swab? It's highly impossible. So vaccination, post-vaccination RT-PCR positive result is the person gets infected just before vaccination or at a point of vaccination.
Okay, doctor.
Fine, sir. We'll move to the next session.
Yes, sir. Yes, madam. Thank you very much for the wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Wonderful
Thank you,
lecture, doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.